This morning, as usual, is Julian Drucker, who is 5 News correspondent. Good morning to you.
Good morning, David. We're both wearing this, for TV viewers, we're both wearing the same colour, aren't we?
Similar colours.
Yours is a shocking pink, mine's more of a...
Mine's a garish pink.
Yeah.
Yes, yours is more refined.
Yes, nuanced.
Nuanced, yes. Mine is definitely out there. Mine is very Eurovision, may I say.
It's not
very
like you.
Cheeky. Very good to see you.
Good to see you, David.
So what would you like to start with this morning?
There's so much going on. First of all, this Sun exclusive that sort of broke yesterday evening online and is obviously in the newspaper today. This is the story about Conor Burns being sacked over sleaze allegations, an interesting end to conference week for Liz Truss. Conor Burns having the whip suspended, complaints about his, quote, serious misconduct in Birmingham this week. Mr. Burns has denied all this, although he says he hasn't been told what the allegations actually are. A bit more in the Times, actually, about it from Patrick Maguire, saying it was on Tuesday the Whip's office was made aware of an incident involving Mr. Burns in the Hyatt Regency Hotel in Birmingham, and then a complaint was lodged on Thursday, it says, not by the alleged victim, who's a man. Very interesting, just to see Liz Truss sort of acting in a speedy way in response to what essentially did for Boris Johnson with Chris Pincher back in July, who didn't deal with it as quickly.
Well, of course, she's keen to distance herself from Boris Johnson, isn't she, in the way that she's dealt with this? I mean, Conor Burns, the trade minister, was sacked, had the whip removed, and these claims, as you say, of inappropriate behaviour. He went on to say he felt they'd rushed to judgment, and obviously, as I said, the Prime Minister very keen to distance herself from sort of the actions of Boris. But clearly, I know, Renee, I know you have quite strong views on this.
So Liz, I understand politically why Liz Truss has done this, of course, because it was one of Boris's, major flaws in that he was indecisive over things like this. So I understand that she's got to do it to be seen to be acting, and she can't now get any criticism for that. What worries me is that we're supposed to have people in this country innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah.
And we haven't. Whenever there's anything like this, he's guilty. In the public's eyes, he's guilty. We don't even know what he's guilty of, but he's guilty. And I struggle with this. We've also named him. And, there's always this smell that lingers afterwards, even if someone is innocent.
I mean, he does go on to say, Conor Burns, I was not given any information about the complaint, nor was I asked to provide any information.
Yeah.
Ryan Saby, actually, will be joining us later today. He is the deputy political editor at The Sun. He'll be with us in about 90 minutes' time. So, and obviously, the Sun has got this.
Yes. Yeah.
But I mean, in terms of, clearly, it's a very explosive story. It's really rounded off a terrible week for Liz Truss.
Yes. I mean, the speech on Wednesday, wasn't it, is already sort of forgotten.
Yeah, it has been.
And we await the Sunday papers.
I mean, in terms of her speech, I just said, and I was doing Drive at the time, there was nothing in it.
It was very short, wasn't it?
It was very short.
Was it half an hour?
Yeah, about that. Yeah, and normally you would expect the leader's speech to be about an hour.
It's kind of a blessing, though, isn't it, that we get a short speech?
What I thought was really interesting is the way that she finished the speech and got into a car. I mean, there was no hanging around. But actually, I thought she delivered a measured performance. I thought it wasn't a car crash. I thought it was okay. And I think she can rebuild. The question is, how much time does she have? And things like this just simply don't help, do they?
I'm not convinced, actually. I think her U-turn has killed her chance.
The 45p tax rate?
I think she's killed any chance of being...
So I would agree with you. The thing is, if you're brave and if you say, I've got policies and these are the policies, then you don't U-turn.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially on the day before when you said, I'm Margaret Thatcher, this woman's not for U-turning, which effectively is what she said.
And then U-turn. And so, Julian, you must have chums who've been at conferences.
Yes.
And what's the mood been at the Conservative Party conference?
Well, it was really strange. There weren't speeches every day until 4 o'clock, which is...
Very late.
I mean, that is barely a conference if you're going to start.
So there was nothing till then?
There was nothing really going on until 4 o'clock every day. So a really strange conference, really strange mood, and talk of, Suella Braverman talking of a coup. I mean, that's probably the most extraordinary moment of the week for a cabinet minister to be using language like that. I think a feeling that they will stick with Truss simply because there's just too much chicanery and faff to get rid of someone at this point.
But you see, if they did get rid of her, I think they're toast.
Yes.
Yeah.
Of course they are.
That's the big problem.
But the thing is, they can make the decision to stick with her, but then if they're going to stick with her, then stick with her. And when she makes a decision, don't start plotting behind her back to pull her down.
Yes. Yeah. Talking of plotting, in the Times,
Yes.
Nadine Dorries has given an
That was
interview.
seamless.
That
I
was
thought that was very
seamless.
good.
Well, she refers, obviously Boris Johnson does not give interviews. This is the next best thing, because they're such close friends. She reveals that former Prime Minister Boris Johnson hadn't even watched Liz Truss's speech on Wednesday. She says...
How does she know that?
Well, she says, the whole time I was with him, she says he was swinging a cricket bat. He's having a great time, she says. He's very happy and very relaxed. And then in this two-page interview in the Times, she then frankly has a go at Liz Truss. She said it's not Liz's fault that Conservative MPs removed Boris, much as they'll come to regret it when they don't have a job, but it's Liz's fault that she's decided to take certain points of ideology and impose them now both on the party and the country when no one has actually voted for that. She is suggesting they're going to have an absolute drubbing at the next...
Well, she actually earlier in the week was calling for a general election because she's essentially said Liz Truss doesn't have a mandate.
But it doesn't matter to her because she's not going to lose her seat because Boris is going to put her in the House of
Good point.
Lords.
Yes, which is another anachronism. The whole point, that House of Lords really needs radical reform. I do not understand how if you're a chum of someone, you get put in the upper house.
Where you earn £385 a day
For
just
signing
for
in.
turning up.
Yeah.
So Nadine Dorries for sucking up to Boris, because let's face it, that's all she's done in her career.
What do you really think?
She's going to earn a fortune of money for the rest of her life.
Yeah.
It's outrageous.
I
It
know.
should stop.
And she's frustrated. Things like the online safety bill, her department did do lots of excellent work on that, and it now possibly won't get through, so she's really frustrated.
No, I'm sure, but again, for me, this is about leadership, and so Liz Truss was the one they decided to elect, the Conservative members did, and actually there's then the argument, should they actually have given it to the members, because that's only a recent occurrence. Maybe it should have been left down to the MPs, and if the MPs had elected it, they elected the leader, they would have got Rishi Sunak, so they would have had something different. But the members wanted Liz Truss. Now, the fact is, she stands for various things, and good on her, but stick to your guns.
Be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, I totally agree. But, so Nadine Dorries, but she's always been a card, hasn't she? She's always been liking controversy.
Do you know what I can't forgive her for, actually?
Go on.
Is during the whole COVID thing, she repeatedly online absolutely refused to accept that lockdowns was damaging mental health and that some people had committed suicide. We are now seeing figures out of the States and the UK that show that not only have suicides gone up, but child suicides have gone up. So I cannot forgive her ever for that.
She said it's collective responsibility and they couldn't speak out. But yeah, the same with Rishi also criticising lockdowns.
Do you think Boris Johnson did see her speech? Of course he did.
Of course he did.
I'm sure he did.
Of course he did. Because you want to say, she did a worse job than me.
Yes, he was probably waiting for something to happen. Obviously, those Greenpeace protesters.
Do you think they were Carrie's friends?
Well, that was... there's the head of PR for Greenpeace.
But actually, you see, and I said this on Drive, that actually once the Greenpeace protesters stood up, Liz Truss's perforance improved.
They did her a favour.
Oh, massively. Massively.
There's a history of this happening. There was a Harold Wilson one, wasn't there?
Yes.
Where, it was the moment that people remember, and she got to look decisive, and it diffused the atmosphere, didn't
And
it?
of course, then the conference tone changed because they were willing her on.
Yes.
Yes.
They wanted her to succeed, and I think it gave her time to regroup. And
She was able to say, remove them now.
Yeah,
Really authoritative.
absolutely. Right, let's move on.
And there's another big conference today.
Oh, yes,
of course.
there is, because I saw them preparing for it. They've got a very sexy backdrop.
SNP.
Yes, this is in Aberdeen. Nicola Sturgeon did a round of interviews yesterday, including the programme I work on, where she was having a go at Liz Truss, saying they haven't had a conversation.
So did you interview her?
I didn't get to, unfortunately, I didn't get to interview Nicola Sturgeon, but a round of anger on all these different outlets where she said Liz Truss has not called her, although they met briefly at various things involving the Queen over the last few weeks.
Hang on a minute. So the way that was written was the fact that they hadn't communicated, but they clearly met anyway.
Yes, they had met. Yeah, she did say in these interviews that they had met at various.
So is she just
points.
stirring the pudding?
Well, it's possible.
You would expect, though, the new Prime Minister of
You
the
would.
UK to make a call to all of the devolved leaders. I mean, I can't bear Nicola Sturgeon, but I would still expect Liz Truss to call her.
Liz Truss would have met all the devolved leaders because she was accompanying King Charles on this tour of the different nations, so she's went to Northern Ireland, Liz Truss. She's been to Scotland. So it's actually, she's probably more well-travelled than any other new Prime Minister, because she went to all these places in
and for me, that changes the optics, because the way Nicola Sturgeon is selling it is that we've had no communication, she didn't call me, but they did meet, they did chat.
Yes. Yeah.
So... And also, I mean, I kind of want to say to Nicola Sturgeon, just get on with the day job. You know, stop banging on about independence. I mean, really.
Well, she's talking about a Scottish pound. This will be part of her speech this weekend. And
well, you know why? Because what currency is Scotland going to use if they become independent?
The Scottish pound.
Yeah, because they can't have the pound, because the Bank of England has said you can't have the pound. Then they wanted the euro, and the EU have said you can't have the euro.
Can they even have the king? That's what I want to know.
Yes, under the Union of Crowns.
Okay.
Yes, I happen to know that. So they can.
crown, isn't it?
Yes, it was, because of course that was in 1707.
Okay.
I believe so. But so the SNP conference obviously will have a lot of people attending.
Yes.
But we were talking about this earlier in terms of people in the rest of the United Kingdom. I don't know how much relevance the SNP conference has. That's a controversial point.
Possibly. I mean, some people would say if there was going to be a vote, maybe the rest of the UK should also have a vote as to whether they want to keep Scotland.
I think that's fascinating.
That's very controversial. But it's going to be October next year, this Indie Ref 2. This is the unofficial referendum Nicola Sturgeon's hoping to have.
Because, of course, they're trying to get legal approval as to whether they can call a referendum. And my feeling and what I've heard is they can't.
Yeah, the Supreme Court will give a ruling at some point, but it all rests on their
I think it's quite soon, though.
I think let her do it. And if she loses it, which I think she will,
I do
then what's she for? She will have to go.
Anyway, so people obviously excited about this conference. Is there anything in the paper sort of talking about what else they're going to talk about other than independence?
There is real excitement about this. I mean, it's always difficult. It's at the end of conferences, isn't it? And it's at a weekend. It just says, you know, they're going to publish their independence prospectus. It is all about this October possible vote next year. I mean, if that doesn't happen, I suppose there's more resentment and, you know, will fuel even more.
I mean, that's a really good point. I mean, how much of this is actually then the resentment builds because the UK government is denying them a referendum? Maybe your point is valid, saying, actually, have one, because I think the result would be less than last time.
I agree. And so,
but that's a spin of the coin thing, isn't it? And then are we betting on black or red? And then your point, Julian, is also valid, which is actually if you ask the people of England whether they want to keep Scotland in the Union, I'd be very nervous about the result of that. Very.
And it's possible, you know, the royal stuff recently in the Queen and the loyalty to the Queen, and obviously she died in Scotland, would that even possibly affect the voting?
And of course that's right, and I think you've seen already the royals up in Scotland far more, haven't you? And the sentiment and the passion. I don't think the result would go Nicola Sturgeon's way.
I don't think it would either, and so I think they should do it. If I were Liz Truss, I'd just say, oh, for goodness sake, child, go and do it.
Well, she sort of said that, didn't she, in the hustings? She said it's time to ignore her. She's an attention seeker. I look forward to seeing Liz Truss and Nicola Sturgeon in the same room together. Could be like Dynasty. It sounds like they're going to have a proper
like power dress each other, having
the fountain.
Right, now the most important story of the day, obviously.
Yes, well, bad news for Scotland because they've missed out on Eurovision. That announcement came last
I'll tell you, Nicola Sturgeon not happy about that.
Yeah, I mean, she was really looking forward to Glasgow getting Eurovision. Instead,
I thought Glasgow would get it.
Yes, yeah.
I really did.
Why?
I just thought that the BBC might just decide that that was the right city.
Okay.
You can read between the lines.
They had COP26 there. I mean, they have all the infrastructure there.
They do have infrastructure.
It seemed likely.
But I also think that it was to do with the bids, wasn't it? So my understanding is that both cities put in very good bids. It was about the number of hotel rooms. It was about the legacy.
It didn't work.
Well, the legacy, and also, of course, Liverpool has that musical legacy as well. That would have played into it, I'm sure. But the logistics of this are enormous. And just in terms of, what are the papers saying about this?
Well, I should say that Liverpool is twinned with Odessa, so there was a stronger link to Ukraine, so that went in its favour. But I think if people are thinking it's going to be a celebration of Britishness, this Eurovision in the UK next year, it won't be. It will be, I think, for viewers at home, it will be the same as watching a Eurovision being hosted in Kyiv, and essentially it will be, a Ukraine show that's just hosted in the UK. Yeah, as it should be. But it's not going to be a, celebration of Liverpool. I don't think.
No, I mean, I go back to what we said at the beginning. The fact is, you can't get a hotel room, and that's before the tickets are released. So
yes.
Everyone is coming here, and that's the point economically, isn't it?
But do we think that the UK will get more points when it's in Liverpool for a prize for hosting it for Ukraine? I'm not saying that's how
you saying it's political?
But
maybe. By the way, here's a little fact. When ABBA performed in 1974, we give them 0 points.
Wow.
I know.
That was in Britain. That was in Harrogate, I think.
Was it?
I think so.
Well done.
I don't know why they were hosting it in the UK that year.
It was in Brighton.
Brighton, sorry, apologies.
But anyway, Brighton's near Harrogate.
It was hosted in Harrogate once, but sometimes people say that the UK puts in a duff entry so that it doesn't win and therefore
I think that's right, because you see, the host country then has to pay to host it, and of course, I think the host nation, the BBC, did not want to pay for another one.
It's super expensive.
Yeah. But I assume we're paying for this one.
Yeah, I mean, you'll be watching, I understand. I mean,
I may or may not be.
Too fast.
From your RV?
Well, no, because Christo and I now
On
going in an RV, which is deeply frightening on so many levels, let me tell you. Okay, let's move on from the Eurovision and to the Sun.
A different sort of circus. This is page 7 of the Sun. Royal news. This is from Matt Wilkinson, the royal editor, just about Harry and Meghan, and obviously everything that's been going on in the last few weeks. Possible reconciliation with the royal family is coming in 2023, but does that mean that, we know about this memoir and the Netflix program, are they still coming out? Well, yes. So their plan is to release this stuff and then to reconcile afterwards.
Well, is it? Because we talked about this on the talk this week, and I think Harry's backpedaling. I think he's
trying.
I think he's trying. I think he is deeply worried about what he has said, and the point that I made was that he's suddenly woken up and realised his proximity to the throne.
100%. I think he came over here, I watched him walking behind his grandmother's coffin, and I thought, he's thinking, what have I done?
Yeah.
What have I done?
It says the memoir is expected in shops next month. I think it's out at Easter next year. I think it has been delayed.
With some scribbles over certain paragraphs.
I'm not sure it's coming out in November.
But you see, the publisher paid a lot of money for that. So
17 million.
17 million, yeah. So that's some advance. And therefore, as the publisher, I would expect to have all the juicy gossip.
Yes. I mean, I've never published a book, but if it's written, I don't know if the author can then make changes.
I think you can suggest them, but it's ultimately up to the publisher. I'm sure when you sign that contract.
Isn't it? I think that's the problem. So they would have to
is it printed?
I thought I'd heard it was printed, and they would have to pulp it and start again.
Crikey. I mean, it was interesting. We talked also about the new portrait, William and Kate and Charles and Camilla, and of course the other two are not in it. And again, it's because they're not working royals. And I just wonder, and Harry just doesn't look very happy. I mean, we're reading a lot into this, but yes.
No, I agree.
Well, and that picture, by the way, where Meghan is literally holding his
and
hand.
he's in the shadows behind
smiling, wasn't he?
Sorry?
Wasn't he kind of smiling, sort of?
Well, that's a grimace.
I feel that it kind of is, blink twice if you need help.
Like a hostage video, yeah. Holding up a newspaper.
I mean, honestly, very funny. Right, anything else from you, sir?
That is it. I mean, just essentially, they want to build bridges, but they are releasing all this stuff. I mean, perhaps don't release the stuff and then you don't need to build the bridges, perhaps. I don't know.
I would agree with that.
Publish first, ask forgiveness afterwards.
It's going to be a busy autumn.
So there is one other thing that I think plays into this, because of course they moved to California and they're in their own little bubble, and it's not real. I lived there for a while. It isn't a real environment, and I think coming back to the UK, and yes, it's partly that proximity, but it's coming home, isn't it? Seeing the pomp and the circumstance, and maybe the outpouring of love for his grandmother. And it really was extraordinary.
It really was. And for Charles as well. So I think maybe he was a bit shocked at how well people accepted King Charles, because there was always this rumbling, wasn't it? Oh, we love the Queen, but we're not sure about Charles.
That's a very good point.
Yeah, and I think he saw that and thought, actually, is this just going to backfire on me spectacularly? I'm going to look like an absolute chump.
And I'm just wondering also, you saw in really beautifully the continuity of the monarchy. It carries on. It's regardless of who is the head of state at that time. And you could see that. It was seamless. It was so well orchestrated, well organised. And again, I wonder if that plays into Harry's thinking.
There's like an outpouring for the Prince and Princess of Wales as well. There seems to be a surge in coverage of William and Kate, more than a few months ago.
Which I'm sure is their PR machine working well. But also, don't forget that Charles has not yet proclaimed on whether or not their children can be prince or princess.
Yes. Yeah.
That's still silent. He said nothing. And I think he's probably waiting to see what Harry and Meghan do.
Do you think that he's waiting for the book?
I really do. I think he wants to see. He's almost saying, look, let's see what way you're going to play this game.
And yet he was inclusive. He did, in his original speech, if you remember, he said, talked about the whole family, including...
He said, I love him. And they're now forging their own life in California.
He did say that. He did say that.
It was a nice moment, wasn't it?
But it was almost like, bye.
You made your choice.
Exactly.
There's your plane ticket, off you go. Yeah, really interesting times. Lots of messages coming in. This one, John in Lincolnshire. I love having you both on air. I'm sure it means all three, Julian. Find your style calming. I was born in Liverpool and spent 3 years as a boy in Glasgow. As I don't watch Eurovision Song Contest, I would have been happy whichever city won. It would have made no difference to me, but they're welcome, genuinely welcome. Glad it's not London, as Christo whined about. I don't know about that, because I still think London has the infrastructure, it has the hotels, everyone flies here, you can get here easily.
I know, but we're supposed to be levelling up, so we're supposed to be spreading these things around, aren't we?
Yeah.
And can I just say, Dave, we're talking about the SNP, Dave says the relevance of the SNP conference to the rest of us, none at all. Bear in mind that if the Scottish dictator gets her way, the Scots who live here and abroad do not get a vote, whilst non-Scots recently arrived from goodness knows where do. And this one from Mick says, will the alleged dodgy dealings over ferry contracts and the missing 600,000 be discussed at the SNP conference? I don't think it will.
Scottish dictator.
That's good, isn't it?
He means Nicola Sturgeon, obviously.
Well,
SS Sturgeon.
Their words, not mine. You'll get me into terrible trouble. Julian, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Indeed. After the break, Tom Clayton will be joining us to talk us through all things sporty. This is Talk TV. We're broadcasting live from the Talk Radio studios.